I think we've started.
Oh yeah, there's 21 participants in
Okay,
here.
great. Yay. Hey guys.
Amazing.
Hi.
They're all joining, so let's hold on a second. I'm going to text Juliana and make sure we're good.
Okay, for anyone joining, Catherine and I are here in the woods in Pennsylvania at our dad's house, and we are live with Claire Mazur and Erica Cerulo, who are both in Brooklyn right now. What's it like?
Hi. The streets are pretty empty.
Not surprising.
Yeah, but other than that, think just business as usual at my house.
The sun came out this afternoon. That was a big win. It was like pouring down rain all morning.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It hailed for a minute.
Yeah. It was like a windstorm. It's like, where are we? That's very apocalyptic. Are you guys doing food delivery or you're going out to the grocery?
I've been doing food delivery, but I have to like patch it together from a million different things. And it's like we did our harvest. Oh, we did pick up from the Fly because the Fly and Hearts are doing a thing where you can shop online and then pick it up. And they're doing a good job. Like it's very low contact.
Right. Yeah.
We're doing mostly grocery, and then we supplemented with like fancy cheese and wine delivery.
That sounds amazing.
Everything
you guys, can you imagine that Catherine and I can't even drink right now? It's so rude.
It is incredibly rude. Incredibly rude.
Okay. We are up to, I think about half of our participants have now joined, but we'll wait another minute or two and then we'll get started and people can just join as they join.
Are you guys going to the grocery store in Delaware?
Jansen's, which
That's where my parents are going.
Another Wilmingtonian has pickup where they like load things in the back of you, but it's not done digitally. It's very 1950 where you call them 3 days before, give them a list, stay on the phone while they go find everything.
and then you may or may not get like 75% of what you ordered.
Well, that's what my parents were saying. They were like, and then it was the wrong brand. And then I didn't like the produce that they picked out. And and I was like, I don't care. You're not going into a grocery store. Like, absolutely not.
Grocery store either. So we've been doing that. And like, it does feel like a support a small pop shop, but I will say it's total crapshoot as to whether you get one.
We can make it not for want of it.
Yeah, we're handling it.
Exactly. All right, let's kick this off. For everybody who has joined, thank you so much for spending your Thursday early evening with us. You've got Catherine, Lizzie, Claire, and Erica. Claire's in the white, Erica's in the black. They color coordinated for us, I think.
Easy. Yeah.
Absolute best buds when it comes to both friendship, but also the entrepreneurial journey. For the past 10 plus years, we've kind of been side by side as our businesses were both launched and nurtured and grew sort of, I would say, more or less in parallel with each other. Until you guys closed last fall, we pretty much had similar stories in terms of the sizes of our teams, the profiles of our teams. The biggest difference was a few years in, you guys sold to a Fortune 500 company, and we still not figured out how to do that. So Claire and Erica founded, for those who don't know, Of a Kind, an amazing website that featured all sorts of design articles, clothing, jewelry, Lizzie Fortunato, and home goods. But they also have their hands in a lot of other projects. They've got an amazing podcast, which is still up and running, called A Thing or Two. They have had an amazing mailer over the year where they identify all sorts of great products. If you're not on it, it's extraordinary. They've written a book, Work Wife, which Lizzie and I are also in because we are each other's life and work wives. And
life wives.
Totally. And we've actually hosted what we call Creative Women's Dinners with Claire and Erica, which are opportunities to get other creative women around the table. And today we're doing that with all of you guys in the form of a Creative Women's coffee, wine, Zoom, whatever you want to call it. So without further ado, thank you guys so much for joining us. Everybody who's on the panel is welcome to put questions in the Q&A. We will be checking those, but we also have a bunch of questions that Lizzie and I want to ask Claire and Erica. Their business was closed last fall, and so they've already understood the art of the rebound before the rest of us have faced it in the pandemic. So I think there's a little optimism today. I hope so, at least.
We hope so.
So really quickly, for all of those who don't know, can you guys just give us the 30 seconds on your backgrounds? What you study in school? What made you guys perfectly suited to be the entrepreneurs that you became? What's your journey?
Erica, do you want to go?
Yeah. So Claire and I met at the University of Chicago in 2002, which is half a lifetime ago. I was a sophomore and Claire was a freshman, and we became friends and both moved to New York after graduation, where I wanted to work. I got a job in magazine editorial, which is like what I moved to New York to do. And Claire got a master's in arts management. And sort of during that period of time where we had, our sort of first jobs and we're figuring out what we wanted, we were talking a lot about our passions. And I think a lot of other businesses that other people were building. And I think we didn't necessarily know it at the time, but we were sort of harboring these entrepreneurial interests, or at least interests in owning something or building something from the ground up. And on a cold January night in 2010, we came up with the idea for Of a Kind through like a 26 email chain. And we met the next day for coffee to talk about it, and launched it 10 months later. So it was a pretty quick process in that way.
And I remember in the midst, like before we'd started it, walking down the street, was it in Soho? It was Prince, and we ran into you guys because we had just come from a meeting with Matt Singer. Yes. And you guys were walking to your old apartment. And then I feel like that was like the beginning of the romance.
It's so wild how quickly you guys started. And I'm wondering, when you were first trying to get things off the ground, was the biggest challenge more financial or creative, and thinking about like, what does this look like versus how do we get the money to do this?
So we were really fortunate that we were able to raise a very small amount of friends and family money, and that we were young enough that our lifestyles were not very expensive to begin with. Like, we weren't making a lot of money at the jobs that we ended up quitting. We didn't have families to support. We didn't have high rent or mortgages. So the money was a challenge, and it was a challenge throughout the entire, life of the business, basically until we sold it. But I feel like the bigger challenge was just we didn't know anything. Like, we had no business starting the business that we started. And especially before we actually launched it, we didn't know what we didn't know. And that was so anxiety inducing. And as stressful as it was when we actually launched the business, I think there was a certain calm to at least knowing what the problems were.
Did you guys write a formal business plan? Because that's something that Kat and I never really did. And we're like, in retrospect, we didn't even have a business plan. Like, each day was its own new adventure. What about you guys?
We went through the process of writing a business plan, but it was in this way where we would Google like how to write a business plan, and filled out templated, documents. And I think it was a good exercise for us, mostly in getting on the same page and figuring out, okay, how are we thinking about marketing? Or, what kind of revenue are we thinking about for our first year? And then we sort of promptly put this business plan away and never looked at it again. And it was just like a good way of us making sure that we were at least checking the boxes or thinking about the things that we really didn't have the experience working through.
Yeah, like at the time, I think we definitely thought we were creating something that we were going to be sending to a lot of people and that would be like used in some way. And it wasn't, but it wasn't a waste of time. And I honestly think that one of the most important things about it was that it gave Erica and I a chance to realize that we were thinking about things in the same way and to articulate all of that.
Well, you guys seem to be aligned as work wives and maybe even twins, despite biological.
It's a huge honor coming from you two.
And I think that's why we get along together so well, because you guys as a partnership have always kind of mirrored how Lizzie and I work as a partnership.
Yeah.
So one question that kind of touches on what Lizzie just asked, but you obviously ran the business for 10 years until this past fall. Obviously, you ran into a lot of unexpected challenges and some great things too. What were some of those challenges before we get to the COVID level challenges? what was some of the best advice you got along the way? How did you guys navigate the tough spots?
If I think back, I think the two biggest challenges or things that felt the hardest to me, that I felt like I was banging my head up against a wall the most about, were fundraising and managing a team. Those were the things where I felt like I just don't know that I'm succeeding. And in fundraising, I knew that we definitely see. and management, I think we both got a lot better at over time. And I'm trying to think like what the best advice we got about managing a team was. Erica, do you, or fundraising? I don't know.
I don't think we got any good fundraising advice, honestly. I think all of the fundraising advice suggested that we perform as people that we were not. And I think that, you know, it was all about like, sell this story, sell this bill of goods, walk into a room with just like this extreme confidence. And I think it didn't suit who we were as people. And then it suddenly was, that wasn't going to induce any confidence in us either, by like having to walk into a room, not only selling the story, but then pretending to be someone else entirely. Yeah, I think all of the fundraising advice we got was really bad.
I also think, you know, in retrospect now I look and I realize that we were fundraising for a business that was not positioned appropriately for the fundraising climate we were in, which was venture capital. And so now I feel like if I wanted to fundraise for a business, I would probably work backwards into a business model that I knew investors wanted to see. And yeah.
When it comes to sort of hiring and firing and managing people, you know, I think that the best advice we got was really just about being honest and being straightforward. And I remember when we needed to fire an employee for the first time, we called two people. We called an advisor of ours who was a guy who was like, well, just tell her that you're downsizing and that you need to cut the role and blah, blah, blah. And we're like, but that's not what's happening. And he's like, but that's what people say. Like, you can just, you know, spin this like that. And then we called another advisor who was like, here's the script. You like put, you know, you have to tell her based on the conversations we've been having, it's not going to come as a surprise to you that we're having this conversation now. And just be super upfront and super honest. And that's going to serve you in the relationship well, because, you know, spinning up some like tale about cutting costs and roles isn't going to serve you or her.
Are one of the two of you better at those tough conversations?
It depends on the conversation.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I think in general, you're better at the tough conversations on a day-to-day basis. But then when it has come to like those conversations,
like hiring,
I tended to lead them.
You guys gave me some of my best employee advice, and for all the entrepreneurs on here, I hope I can pass it along. But Claire and Erica, when we were in a moment of needing to do multiple hires, and you know, Lizzie and I don't have an HR department or a legal department, so it was upon us to figure out who those hires would be. Claire and Erica said, do not waste your time doing 45-minute or hour-long interviews with someone you've just met on LinkedIn, because inevitably you're going to want to share with them about the role. You're going to want to hear about them and give them a chance. Tell them that that's round 2, and round 1 is 15 minutes. They come, they talk the entire time, and you basically say nothing, and you prep them for this and tell them it's going to be 15 minutes. And if you love them enough, or even think you like them, you can invite them to a round 2. And if you know that they're a dud, for lack of a better word, or they're not the right fit, you've only wasted 15 minutes and not an hour. And it seems small, but getting advice from you guys about that has probably saved me many hours.
It's just so time consuming. And the thing is that you know really quickly. I mean, 15 minutes is certainly enough to know, is this somebody that you could spend an hour with? And if you can't spend an hour with them, you're definitely not going to hire them. And so I was always really like, before we implemented that rule, when someone would walk in and I knew right away they weren't right, my heart would sink, because it's like, oh my God, we're in here for another 45 minutes with this person. I know they're not the right person. I have so much to do today.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked a little bit about fundraising, but I think that the participants want to hear a little bit more. I remember years ago being in Texas at a trunk show together and talking over margaritas and pulled pork sandwiches about how intimidating it was to go into these male-dominated venture capital environments and pitch what really people didn't understand at the time as an online platform for small batch fashion. And you ultimately found a buyer, Bed Bath & Beyond, who was not a VC buyer. But can you just talk a little bit about, A, why you decided you either needed to fundraise or to sell, B, who you thought the proper acquisition would be, or acquisition target would be, and then sort of how things happened and whether that was the right thing, whether, you know, you regret who acquired you, what your thoughts are for the process of people who are starting companies with the goal of eventually selling them.
To speak to the question about why we thought we needed to either fundraise or sell, we got to a point with the business where we had raised a small amount of angel investment and friends and family, and we were testing a lot of different things. And about 3.5 years into the business, we launched a marketplace sort of extension of our model that ended up being a real operational and logistical headache. And we realized in launching that it wasn't drawing on the skills that Claire and I really excel at. It wasn't drawing on any of the sort of creative, editorial, art direction expertise that we had developed or honed over the years. And it ended up being unsuccessful. And we were at this place where we were sort of like running up against a wall and worrying about cash flow and thinking, feeling very risk adverse at that point and thinking, okay, if we make another mistake like this, that could be it for our business. And so we were sitting there thinking, we either have to really tighten what we do and, you know, have very, very narrow focus, or we need to raise money or sell. And for us, the idea of really narrowing our focus, it just isn't who we are and what we do. And as you mentioned, like, we like a side project, we like a brand extension. And so at that point, we knew we had to take more outside funding or find a partner that could help fund the growth.
Mm-hmm. So we started having those conversations, and basically what happens is, like, you get one conversation going and everybody tells you, if you have one conversation going, you have to go tell everybody else you think could be a potential buyer that you're having these conversations so that you drum up competition. And so we did that. It was like just emailing everybody we could think of like, we're starting to have conversations about potential acquisition. It's called running a process. And
when was this? You launched in 2010, and about when was this?
2015. Yeah, and we actually, it was funny because it was January of 2015. Erica and I used to do these things. I mean, we still do. Where at the beginning of every year when we would come back from breaks for the holidays, we would sit down and sort of try to think about priorities for the year. And I remember at that meeting, we did it at, is it called Margot at the restaurant? It's in a hotel in the West Village. We're sitting there like going through social media stuff and like trying to make all these priorities, but we're feeling so despondent about the state of the business. And we were like, why are we talking about like social media strategy right now? Like, we have to like have a bigger conversation here. So that day in like early January of 2015, we made the decision that we were going to sort of run this process. And we made long lists of people who we thought might be appropriate potential acquirers. And they were all of the sort of usual suspects from Etsy on. And we did have lots of conversations with those types of people that did start to progress, and that we thought, okay, it seems like at least one of these is going to go somewhere and work out, and we'll probably get sort of like acqui-hired by a startup, and like maybe they'll keep the Of a Kind brand going, but probably not. And probably will just be sort of like put to work in service of the whatever brand acquires us. And I remember we got a piece of advice from someone while we were doing that. And he said, it was someone who had been sort of like a longtime supporter of the business. And he was like, here's the thing, don't waste your energy going after these like big name companies, these big name retailers who don't know you and haven't heard of you, because they're not going to understand your value. And it's the people like me who've like known you for a long time and know that you guys are hustlers. They'll get it. So just like, don't even waste your time with like the big names. And sure enough, truly out of nowhere, we got on Bed Bath & Beyond's radar. And they were immediately interested. It happened very quickly. They were like, yes, this makes sense for us. And it was totally flew in the face of the advice that guy had given us. And I think, when I think back, I'm like, he totally underestimated our ability to convey our value to someone in a meeting. And yeah, for them, they looked at us and saw an opportunity to acquire our talent as leaders and as creative visionaries, and also our expertise around e-commerce, around storytelling, around millennials, and an opportunity to sort of differentiate their offering for their customers and offer something a little more unique than what they were used to.
That's incredible. And I love that when the acquisition did happen in 2015, Bed Bath & Beyond let you function pretty autonomously. I remember right after it happened, we were like, what does this mean? And you were like, well, we're still in our same offices for now. And we still have the same team, which is so cool. And you guys mentioned storytelling as being part of the Of a Kind business, obviously pre and post acquisition. And that's something that Kath and I have been talking about a ton in light of this pandemic, because it's like, I mean, we're doing more IG lives, we're doing more handwritten notes to customers, more like as much as we can doing more of a dialogue with the people purchasing our products. And I think a lot of brands are doing that right now. But I'm curious, like, have you been purchasing things in the past few weeks of the pandemic? And if you are they things that people are doing story around? I feel like you guys are storytelling pioneers. Are you particularly drawn to that right now?
I mean, I do think I've been mostly buying from brands that I feel like I already know their story and I'm very committed to them already. Like I mentioned before that I ordered wine, right? And I bought it from Kingston Wine Company, which we bought you your wedding gifts from, and we love the couple behind that store.
Erin, you diverge to give your best wedding gift pro tip for everybody.
Me too.
A wine subscription, of course. Yes.
And Kingston, for East Coasters, New Yorkers, Kingston Wine in Kingston, New York. Yeah, does it.
I think they ship everywhere.
Yeah, I think they do too. And then so like husband-wife duo, and the wife is an artist, and she like designed this cute little postcard that came in the box, and they have like a little handwritten note and everything. And that's a business that I had previously felt very strongly about. Obviously, I mean, I also think the flip of that has been affecting me during this moment too. I've been unsubscribing from emails of brands who are not engaging in a meaningful way, and who are sending their same sort of like how to wear a pleated chino email on a day when no one needs to wear a pleated chino. There's absolutely no need for a pleated chino on April 9th. Yeah.
I think it's made me very like this experience has made me very conscious of the role that these businesses play in my life, because I have to stop and think like, what if this business doesn't make it through, and like how will I feel then, and what will be missing from my life. And so that's been a big piece of my spending decisions for sure. I haven't been shopping in general. I think I've told you guys I've been on a shopping strike all year, but I have been buying food. And that has been obviously like the local restaurants in our neighborhood contribute so much to my quality of life. So thinking about how can I continue to support them and things like that is really important.
Totally. Rachel Antonoff posted a really good Instagram post the other day about like the small businesses she's supporting, and the way that she hopes and thinks that they feel when they get this order for, a bread knife, because it's the same way she feels when she gets an order for a uterus sweater. And I think that was really charming. And I do think I'm interested to see how this affects consumer behavior more broadly, because I think I've had certain friends start thinking about shopping from smaller businesses in a more proactive way. And then also friends who relied really heavily on Amazon, but now that Amazon's shipping timelines are totally different, are looking for alternatives because of speed of fulfillment, which is it's like something I hadn't really considered.
Totally. It's interesting that they're doing it for like logistical reasons. Like I hear these things about, Amazon workers striking because there's not safe working conditions right now. And like that from an emotional standpoint makes me want to boycott them. But it's so interesting that Amazon of all people is losing customers because they're not as fast as some guy who has capacity to like ship out of the dining room like we're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I've purchased a couple of things over the last few weeks on Etsy. And I think that those sellers are, in some cases, the most capable of fulfilling right now, because they're making things out of their homes, and, it's probably a single person. And as long as, they have the capacity in their household, and everyone's healthy and doing okay, they can, build a shelf or sell antique glasses or whatever it is.
Yeah. It's amazing.
We have a lot more questions for you about the Bed Bath & Beyond and the Of a Kind journey, but really quickly, a great question just came in about management. So before we diverge too much, a question for everybody who's watching, and Claire and Eric answer it. Given your experience as managers, if you were to think back on being an employee, what advice would you give your past self about making your manager's life easier and or distinguishing yourself?
I'm a huge fan of managing upwards. And I think like one of the first questions you can and should ask your manager when you start a new job, and it's, never too late to ask this, is just like, how do you like to be communicated with? How do you want to run meetings? How would you like me to prepare for meetings? How would you like me to like ask questions that come up in between meetings or deliver information for you? I really liked putting really clear systems in place with my employees around like, we're going to do one meeting a week at this time. Here's the shared agenda we're going to have where we can each drop things in so there's no surprises about what's coming up at the meeting. If you have questions that come up in between, send them over Slack, not email. But everybody's preferences are different. So just asking your manager to articulate that, I think, is really important.
Great advice. Okay. Back to Bed Bath & Beyond, and because we want to kind of talk about challenges and rebounding from challenges, you kind of had two transition periods. Obviously, when the business closed this past fall, but also kind of, had to go through a transition of losing the business in a way in 2015 because you were no longer independent owners. Can you talk a little bit about emotions around both of the experiences since you passed over the business in a way twice?
Yeah. When we sold the business, we felt really good about it, and we still feel really good about the decision to sell it. And I think we hoped and were blessed with the continued autonomy to be able to run it pretty independently. That said, we did have a boss for the first time. And, Claire and I had a shared boss that we would have shared check-ins with. And I can imagine that was as odd for him as it sometimes was for us. And I think for us that having to navigate that together was an interesting inflection point or transition of learning how our partnership operated within this new umbrella of having this parent company and this boss, and making sure that those people all understood that the way that we worked together. Because I think you guys probably have the same experience where you can sometimes walk into a meeting and people are trying to suss out who's in charge and who does what, and like who's really taking the lead here. And I think that just breeds insecurity, and it makes it really hard to get things done. And so we had to learn to navigate that between ourselves and then the people around us.
Yeah.
The other thing in that scenario that I never got comfortable with, and I did not understand how to navigate, was not being the final say on certain things when it came to our employees. And, mostly that means money. Like, we did have final say over pretty much everything except money decisions. And so when you had an employee saying, I need a raise, or I really think we need to, do this big web redesign, it was a very odd thing for me to figure out how to say no, even if I didn't want to say no, without just saying, it's not up to me, even though that was kind of the answer. And I still I'm sure other people who have spent the majority of their careers in settings where they have a boss or, are working for a bigger company, are quite comfortable with that. But I always felt very odd about it, because I was like, I'm your boss and it is, I'm in charge here, but I can't make this happen for you. Or all I can do is try.
Totally. So it sounds like in 2015, things were quite positive. Like you were really happy with this decision. You obviously had the challenges of not having the final answer on everything, but in general, it was the right move. How did your emotions differ this past fall when Bed Bath & Beyond decided to close? Were you ready for that and thinking, okay, on to new pastures, or was it a crazy emotional journey?
I don't think we were ready for it, but I also think that we still felt like we'd made the right decision, and it was the right move for us and for the business. We were able over the past 4 years to really grow our team, to do a lot of things that we'd never been able to do before, to run tests that would have been really scary if we didn't have the resources that we had. And we had a team that we really loved. And that was the hardest part about going through, the closing of the business, was knowing that these people were all going to be out of jobs, and that we weren't all going to be able to work together anymore. That was a real struggle for us, for sure.
Totally. Not surprising. I mean, when we talk about the implications of a pandemic and our team is still intact, but the number one thing we talk about is our team. We're like, this business would not be anything without the people who make the wheels turn every day. And that's way beyond Catherine and me.
Yeah.
And yeah. Like number one focus, which I'm sure is the case for every small business right now.
And a lot of people watching, just to give more detailed insight, Lizzie and I are at the point where we have not done any layoffs, and we've sort of huddled together as a team and all taken an equal pay cut across 13 people. And the feedback that I've gotten as one-offs from our employees about, you made the right decision, we're going to get through this together, nothing matters more than the team unit. I mean, first of all, it makes me cry, but second of all, it is kind of an amazing reminder to us that we're really only as good as the 10 or 12 or 20 people or however many are on your small team. So I know as we talked to you guys through the fall and winter, it was the fate of your employees and not being able to see them every day that seemed like the most amount of heartache that was going to come from this transition.
Yeah. And I mean, I think once we were able to tell our team, and once we were able to sort of start managing that and understand where everyone on our team was in terms of headspace and next steps, that helped a lot in terms of us processing it. And then I think we were able to see it as, okay, this is an opportunity for us to think, what we want now. Because I think we started Of a Kind when we were 26 and 27, and our lives have changed a lot in a decade. And so I think in some ways it's nice to be given this hard reset to say, okay, where do you go from here? What do you want the next step to be? And to have that forced, because I think if it wasn't forced, we might have had a really hard time ripping off the Band-Aid ourselves.
Definitely. And that's another thing. Like Catherine and I never push pause because there's never an opportunity to. You guys were forced to push the pause button. Yeah. And that's something I want to ask, especially for people who might be experiencing furloughs or layoffs right now. When you guys closed, was there this moment of like, okay, I'm going to give myself a week or 3 weeks or 6 months? Claire, you have a young son. Erica, you had just bought an apartment. You had other things in your lives going on that I'm sure were taking up time. How much time did you feel like you wanted to give yourself as a break? And for people who are experiencing layoffs right now, like what's your advice on, do you give yourself a break? Do you get out on LinkedIn tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. and start applying for jobs? And how do you navigate that?
I don't think there's a right answer, honestly. And I think it's really hard to know what to do. And I think the only thing that I feel like is good advice around this is that there's no right way to feel, which I know is like something everybody's saying in general about this moment we're living in. But yeah, exactly. We did give ourselves a little bit of a break. So our last day Of a Kind was November 1st. So at that point, it just kind of made sense like to take the rest of the year off. And there were two things that were challenging about that. When you're in your 30s and you have, like you said, a kid, or you just bought a house and you just also have a life and a network and friends, the idea of taking time off just doesn't actually like feel like taking time off. You still have to answer your emails. You still have to like deal with your finances and your family and all the administrative crap that you've also been pushing aside because you've had a full-time job for however long. So that was hard. I was like, this doesn't feel like time off. And then I also wasn't enjoying it because I was like constantly conflicted about what I should be doing. You know, should I be going to the museum? Should I be sleeping all day? Should I be watching trash TV? Or should I be like dealing with this backlog of personal to-dos that I've been neglecting for so long? And the fact was there was no right answer. And I think the best advice we got during that period was from our management coach, who listened to me ramble about this for a while. And I was like, and I feel like I'm not even enjoying it. And And he was like, here's the thing. You're not meant to be enjoying this time. This isn't like for your enjoyment. And I was like, oh, because in my mind the whole time I was like, this is like the last spring break of my life. Like it's the last time I'm ever going to have to take time off, and I've got to make the most of it and like really just like, you know, do it the best way possible. And to have the pressure relieved of that was huge. Like, oh, I don't have to enjoy this. There's not a right way to do it.
Yeah. We also, I think, made the mistake of talking to someone who had taken like a silent retreat sabbatical in Thailand for 3 months, who was like, that's the way to go. And so I think it plants that seed of like, oh, if that's the way to go, I'm not doing that. I'm not in the place in my life to do that. So how do I do my best version of that in Brooklyn? And the answer is you don't.
Well, we also talked to an investor who had like left the firm that he started with and took, I don't know, 6 months off before starting a new firm, and was like, for the first month, the only thing I did was play video games. And I was like, and that was in my head. I was like, oh, that's what you're supposed to be doing before you then go out and raise $500 million for your next VC fund. But yeah, that's not what it looked like for us. And that was okay.
But I feel like, having known you for so long, like there's no world in which you two are sitting back and like playing video games or like watching, hours on end of television. Like, you guys go-getters.
So with that said, for everybody who's listening, obviously you do have your hands in a few different pots right now. I know you kind of had this reset date, roughly January 1st. Merely 3 months later, the world got turned upside down. But if you had to tell people, if you had to define a day right now and what you're working on, what are the things that you guys are excited about in terms of current projects or future projects or goals that you've made for yourself?
So we have a weekly podcast, like you mentioned, called A Thing or Two, that has a companion newsletter called A Thing or Two. So we really enjoy working on those. They're really just like discovery driven lifestyle content around stuff that we think more people should know about, whether it's like a weird snack that we're really obsessed with, or a recipe, or a product, or an app. And we, during this pandemic moment, have adapted some of that content to these little 5-minute videos that we're posting on our Instagrams. In addition to that, we are working towards some consulting style projects and thinking about potentially there's other stuff we're working on. Erica, what am I missing?
Yeah, there's some stuff that's sort of been swirling around in the background, and we'll see what happens with it. It's sort of too soon to say. I mean, I think we continue to be really excited about content. We continue to be excited about discovery and small businesses and women and female entrepreneurship. I think we also have tried to get comfortable over the last 5 months about saying, like, we don't really know what's next. I don't think we've like figured it out for sure. And I over the holidays, when I was visiting with my husband's family and his friends, there were a lot of questions about like, what's next? And these are people I see like once or twice a year. And I got to the place where I was like, yeah, I don't know. And you could see them get a little uncomfortable with it. But I was like, I don't have to force an answer. It's not going to feel like right to me. And that like, maybe it's kind of good for you to hear the answer is, I don't know, because that's fine too.
For as long as I can remember, since we've started this business, people, especially older people, and I will stereotype to say normally men, ask, what's your end goal? Are you going to sell a QVC? What's your end goal? And for so long, Lizzie and I struggled with having a tight, concise, punchy answer. Work for 10 years and then sell for 10 million, whatever it was. We finally accepted a few years ago that it was okay to say, we don't know. We love that our business is so far sustainable. We love what we've built. We love the brand integrity. We love the team.
And we still like,
and we don't know what the end goal is.
What we do every day. Like, it would be weird waking up and going to work miserable, but like, I am so sad not to be in the office. Like, the days when I go to work and I get to sit with everyone all day, and like, that's like my happy place. So like, until it changes, I don't feel like we need to put the pressure of that decision on ourselves.
Yeah. Right.
So with that said, indecision, or sort of indecision forward, but the lack of clarity can be confusing. So how do you guys motivate? And right now is especially hard to motivate because I shower every other day. I don't make my bed. I really have been letting myself go. So both in COVID times, but just generally speaking, when you're going through these transitions, which you guys have now been doing for several months, how do you find the sort of enthusiasm to motivate when you don't have a very clear job definition right now? What's keeping you going, or what are the things you learned?
I think I try to lean into the things that are exciting to me, even if they don't feel like directly relevant to what we do. Because I think a lot of times by just following that rabbit hole, you find a thread that makes sense. So I don't know, like we got really into this really ridiculous romance novel last week, and it was just like, that was the thing that was giving me a lot of energy, and we like recorded Instagram.
It was
for sure.
You guys
and there's
You shared this with the audience, which is what you're so good about doing.
Exactly. And that's like kind of what was like one of the driving theses of a kind, and why we came up with this sub brand that we did called Professional Enthusiast, where it's just like what drives us is sharing the things that we're really excited about, and we don't always know what the end goal is there and what that's gonna result in, or how it's gonna lead to profit or whatever. But it is like what gets us excited, and so finding a way to share that is like what we do.
Two other things I think have been helpful. I think it feels like there's a lot of, pressure, especially when you're not sure what your work is, to be sitting in front of a computer all day. And just like, if I sit here, then something will happen. And if I'm like in front of a screen, that is work. And that's not true. Or it's like ass and chair time doesn't count really when you're working in an office, and it certainly doesn't count when you're trying to figure out what your next move is or what your next job is. You can only apply for a job so many hours a day. You can only, email contacts so many hours a day, whatever it is. And so pressuring yourself to physically be there staring at a screen isn't going to solve the problem. And so I think just forcing ourselves to get out of that mode and to step away has been really helpful. And then exercise. I think we're both committed to and understand the mental benefits of that, and especially right now, just like moving and not sitting all day makes a difference.
What about any practical tips during the pandemic time in terms of motivating? Do you guys get dressed every day? Talk to us about that.
I do. I've I feel somewhat ashamed about it, but I'm just such a prisoner of my own routine. Even when it's to my detriment and I become sleep deprived because I have to get up and run before my son gets up, because if I try to do it afterwards, it just throws off my entire day and I can't focus. And I'm sure you guys feel the same way, and that's how we all ended up in this industry, but I feel better when I like how I look. And so I put on clothes and an outfit that isn't going to be my most fashionable outfit, but something that I feel happy about how I look in it. And it just helps me be in a better mood for the day.
Totally. Let's just quickly break for these two questions that come through that both seem relevant right now. So one person is asking, and Claire and Erica, I'm not actually honestly sure if your management coach is up for sharing the name or resource, but either can you share or can we follow up offline with somebody about either your management coach or an avenue to find one, if that's more appropriate?
Our management coach, his name is Ben Michaelis. You can Google him. I don't know that he's taking on new clients right now, but I also just recommended to someone the other day, the website, The Muse, has a whole light management coach section where you can search by criteria and filter, that looks very good.
Awesome. And what's that website called, Erica?
The Muse, MUSE.
Amazing. That's very helpful. I think all of us need a little bit of that right now. And then also, who are entrepreneurs who inspire you guys?
I am constantly really inspired by the company Bagu and the founder, Emily Sugihara. They do something and they do it really well. So there's a couple of things. One, I just think the product is so smart, right? It's this well-priced, reusable bag that they started, when being eco-conscious was on people's mind, not as intensely as it is right now, but it hits sort of all of the right notes of what people care about. And it's a really basic, inexpensive product, but because Emily and her team have a really strong design sensibility, they're able to make it feel fashion-y and special because they put these really beautiful, sophisticated prints on them. Because of the price point, it's something they can sell in Bed Bath & Beyond, and they can also sell it in Colette, or whatever the new Colette is, Barney's. Barney's. Oh my God, you guys, everything's gone. They can sell it somewhere fancy. And I think they've been really thoughtful about the ways that they've expanded the business and the way they've kept the price point accessible. So again, it feels like something that really fashion-y people want, but you don't have to be super into design or fashion to appreciate it. And it's affordable, and I love that.
Mm-hmm. Such a good answer. Do you want to share our favorite answer? Do I know?
Oh, okay. Well, I first of all was going to say, there are just so many other jewelry brands out there that I really admire. Cappered is one which has grown so big, and they founded it with this little tiny storefront in Williamsburg, whatever it was, 10, 15 years ago. But I have a lot of peers in our like very niche industry who I really admire. But the one that Catherine was just whispering in my ear about is John Darien, who for New Yorkers might know his little empire shops on 3rd Street, just in NoHo area. But he is kind of known for his decoupage plates, which I think he started making like 20 or so years ago, and selling, maybe more than that, selling on the street in Soho. And now he sells them everywhere, from like the little home store in Delaware where we live, or where we are right now, to fancy stores and like Neiman Marcus and all of that. And I think having that breadth of distribution, similar to what you're saying about Bagu, is amazing. It's like I can access people who are just going to this little mom and pop shop in Delaware. I can also access like this super luxury world at the highest end department stores. And Catherine and I find that so aspirational.
We also
I think about your brand too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Erica.
We also find them really relatable. I think that when we talk about entrepreneurs we admire, I don't think that for the 4 of us, we relate so well to people who have raised a ton of money, fly around on a private jet. None of us are citing Mark Zuckerberg, right? We're like kind of have the same entrepreneurial DNA that we have, which I remember a Friday night 2 years ago in November, and it was cold at 8 p.m. as John Darien's store was closing. And John himself was there unloading a crate that had just come in from France of, vintage quilts. And that is so on par with how Lizzie and I operate things. Of course, we've learned to slowly delegate. Of course, we do sophisticated things throughout the day. But look, at the end of the day, in the middle of this pandemic, you and I who are shipping all the e-commerce from the dining room table in the woods right now. So I think that sort of DNA, kind of hustling 24/7, and you've got to love that hustle, because otherwise just don't put up with it for that long, is something that really attracts us to people like John Darien, who are still such a big part of their own brands.
Totally.
And I think we're all drawn to people who do a lot with a little. Yeah. I think that's like the thing that speaks to us. For sure.
Like the resourceful brands that really inspire me. Like I don't get so inspired when I see, as Catherine, like some huge company, like every resource at their fingertips. When I see people who are like staging awesome shows, even though they have like a $5 budget, like that's the kind of thing where I'm like, wow, we can do this. We can make this work.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap it up in the next 5 or 6 minutes. If other people have questions, please feel free to type it in the Q&A window now. But a favorite question that I think everybody, as they scroll their phones these days, give us a little Instagram insight. Who are you following? Who are you loving? What are the cool brands that we should know about? Because you guys are the discoverer we look to.
I've been loving following Lauren Tamaki on Instagram. She's an illustrator. Her work is very amazing, but she also falls down these really deep Instagram rabbit holes where she just like will have 40 screenshots of things that are the same color green, like all going, and you can kind of like watch her mind work, which is a very satisfying experience, I think.
I really love the artist Mimi Ochun is her Instagram handle, and she is so like technically talented and creative, but also really funny, and all of her work has like a really clever sense of humor to it. And it's totally dissimilar from what I see other artists doing right now. So she's really into either like miniature felt replicas or these like giant sort of like stuffed replicas of things, like giant hands. And she did a giant version of the Alison Roman stew, which I thought was really funny for some reason.
That was really
funny. She's just really, really wonderful and thoughtful. And actually her sister is named Miro, and her Instagram handle is Miro Made This, and she makes incredibly beautiful ceramics that we used to sell on of a kind. And they also will occasionally Instagram their parents' work because their parents are also artists, and the whole thing, you just like want to be part of their family.
We're also both huge fans of Jamie Beck and Street Studio. She exclusively did the photography for Of a Kind for a couple of years, and we became pals with her, and now she lives in Provence. And I think she's been doing an especially compelling job of making art through this period. And she started like 20-something days ago doing what she calls #isolation creation series. So every day she sets up a new, mostly still life, occasional portrait and photographs it and shares the process of all of it on her Instagram. And then she also started selling these photographs as posters, which is amazing. And people hadn't really been able to get her work before, and they've really blown up. And so each poster says like, you know, day 14. It's really cool.
I guess as my closing question, and it sort of has to do with this, I think it's times like some fellow jewelry designer wrote me a handwritten card to Delaware the other day to say, hang in there. And they said, remember, after the plague came the Renaissance. And I think that the brands that survive this will discover a level of innovation that they would not have had to had this not happened to all of us. So in a very small way, Lizzie and I are discovering new technology platforms that we weren't thinking about a few weeks ago. Today on our website, we launched a DIY jewelry kit, allowing people to bring jewelry into their own living rooms, even if it's not, you know, a $200 necklace. It's a make your own necklace for $65. Those are small things. What do you guys see if the recovery happens, and if we're looking 12 or 18 months forward, the recovery will happen? Do you have any predictions for the state of retail, the state of fashion, any of the innovations that are coming to come out of it? Or maybe it's not a prediction, maybe it's what you guys hope to see evolve from this moment. But what are your thoughts as we look to the future? And we can close it with that.
I mean, I do hope that there is more of an emphasis on small business and that this leads people to start small businesses. I think that happened after the recession in 2008.
We all launched businesses after that recession.
Yeah.
That's what we all launched.
Yeah, that's what we did. And I do hope that there's a little less glorification of that like hyper fast growth and the venture capital model that I think people are starting to see through, and that especially now people are really seeing the ways in which those aren't necessarily sustainable.
I think in hope that there'll be more diversification of revenue streams. And I mean, I think a couple businesses that I've been following that I think have been doing a good job of this during this time are Sky Ting Yoga, which has been which has an online platform and had it before this happened. So they were well positioned to be launching online classes immediately, and they do live streams on their site every day and then also on Instagram every day. And I think that is like becomes an interesting way for them to say, okay, we've got this like subscription model under our studio model. And Olive and June, a nail salon, or a group of nail salons in Los Angeles that launched these really compelling manicure kits last year with like all the like fancy professional manicure tools, like the little brushes to do designs and stuff. And they've been able to push really hard on those now. So these were businesses that already had these different avenues set up. And when this happened, they were able to like be at it really quickly. They didn't have to come up with a solution then. Yeah.
That's awesome. And also I need that so badly. So I'll be checking Olive and June out.
It's really good. They have this little thing you put on a nail polish bottle so that you can paint your opposite hand easily. And it genuinely works. I've painted my nails multiple times.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
That's
okay. That might be my purchase of the week or the month. You guys, thank you so much. Your insight is really, really informative and helpful, both in terms of starting business and selling businesses and closing businesses, but also during this time and motivating and looking for a bright side. So thank you. And I hope you guys are hanging in there.
Thank you guys. We love you.
We love you.
You guys, and for people watching, truly, if you don't get their newsletter, a few things. Even our husbands just, Peter, Lizzie's husband, just bought yoga toes. Weird rubber things that go in between your toes to stretch them out. But Peter got the mail.
I tried them.
And he's a happy customer. So these girls have
sign up at ClaireandErica.com.
ClaireandErica.com, and these girls have nuggets of information that you can only wish to find in your spare time. So thank you for all of your insight. You guys really, you bring us up when we're down, and you give us a lot of optimism for the future. So thank you so much.
Nice.
Stay healthy.
I know. I can't wait until we can do this in real life soon enough.
Same.
Bye, guys.
Buddy.
Thanks, guys.